Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Harmer, the Executive Director of the Westport Library. Welcome to what is going to be an enlightening and emotionally courageous discussion with Melissa Bernstein, co-founder of Melissa & Doug, the much-loved toy company. Melissa is going to share her deeply personal story, describing how she hid her lifelong secret of depression from everyone, including her parents, friends, husband, and children, and how she coped with it from very early on in her life. Her only therapy until recently was writing what she calls verses. One of her first verses was, "I am fearful, oh so fearful. If you do not show me the light, I will lose the will to live and choose to end this futile fight." Melissa wrote that when she was only 5 years old. To date, she has written over 3,000 poems and until recently, never shared them with anyone. To reveal her struggles and to help others who are suffering from anxiety and depression, Melissa has also written and published a book called Lifelines, an inspirational journey from profound darkness to radiant light. It's her memoir. It includes her photography and her verses. The publication of her book is a timely one because unfortunately, depression is at an all-time high. So to further their commitment to helping others and to bring this disease out of the dark and into the light, Melissa and Doug have recently embarked on a new enterprise, which is also called Lifelines. Lifelines is a new effort to help people accept all feelings as part of who you are. The focus of Lifelines isn't on fixing yourself, but on accepting yourself. And it provides people who are suffering a place and a space to explore everything. Explore things that most people don't want to talk about, and all of it is free. As she writes in the very first verse of her book, "Today I saved a life, although it was my very own, but won't serve a greater purpose till I rescue lives unknown." Something tells me, Melissa, that your grace and determination will, if not already, serve that greater purpose. Joining Melissa tonight in conversation is my friend and library supporter, Dan Wogue. Many of you know and are familiar with Dan. For those of you not familiar with Dan, he is the man behind 06880. For many Westporters, Dan Wogue's blog is the essential source for learning all about the pertinent news and information happening in our community. What many people don't know is that Dan grew up in Westport, has been the Staples varsity boys soccer coach for 18 years, has written 11 books, and has been a leader and at the forefront of the LGBTQ community for over a decade. Thank you both for joining us. And Melissa, thank you for sharing your story.
Wasn't supposed to be crying before this even started. What are you doing? That was so beautiful. And let me just say, I'm here with my partner and best friend of 35 years, another lifelong Westporter, Doug, right by my side as always.
Oh man, it's a Westport fest.
Yes.
This is Lifelines. This is the book. There will be links in the chat for people to check it out and check out that whole ecosystem. You know, Melissa, it's an honor for me to be here with you. What you are doing is spectacular. You are saving lives and influencing people all over the country. But it has to be different to do this sort of thing in your town. You know, people know you all over the world. You design toys, design thousands of toys. Everybody knows Melissa and Doug. But here in Westport, we really know you. What was it like, it's sort of a two-part question, to take your struggle to the world, to people you didn't know, and then to do it in the town where everyone knows you?
Ah, that's a great question and a tough one, I would say. You know, taking it to the world has been the most liberating thing I have ever done. And that's because it took me so long to do it. You know, I spent nearly 50 years basically denying everything I was and everything I felt. And, you know, my feelings, when you're existentially depressed, the feelings are so deep and dark and overpowering and threaten to submerge you every single minute. The only way I survived was by repressing all of it and adopting a facade that I believed was me for my whole life. And, you know, as I got older, the cry of my own soul to be seen authentically got so loud and deafening that I couldn't deny it any longer. And when I finally just ripped off the guise and came out, so to speak, like there was no going back. It was a lioness ready to roar, because I desperately wanted to be seen as who I truly was. So I think, you know, globally or through the world, it was really wonderful. In that, the negative has been that I have somehow unleashed this chasm of despair in so many that is so overwhelming. It almost is threatening to break my heart. You know, I was on a piece on Sunday on CBS Sunday Morning, and I've received to date over 5,000 of the most powerful letters, and they're coming as fast. I can't answer them fast enough. And everyone is telling me like these life stories that are so poignant that they break my heart. Like, we are in crisis mode, and I'm desperate to help others find their light.
So what in Westport, as you walk around, you know, you've told your story, and a lot of people in Westport have things that they hold back, that they hold inside,
Yeah.
the facade that you talked about. So what's it like as you walk around? You know, you walk at Wakeman all the time. I see you.
I do.
I see you at the beach. What's it like to see these people who know you?
I would say there are 3 different reactions I've experienced so far, and I find it like a fascinating study. You know, when you sort of share something, I would say there are those that look at me, realize, oh my gosh, she's the one. She's the existentially depressed one. They avert their eyes and they almost run away. And that's like the repulsion, like I'm contagious. There are those who look at me and I see like the compassion in their eyes, but they don't know what to say. So they sort of awkwardly, and I see them like, do I talk to her? Do I not? And I feel for them because I get it. Like they don't know what to say. What do you say to someone who, you know, is afflicted? So they come over and they'll maybe just awkwardly like touch me from far away and say, I'm so sorry, and kind of like run away. And then there are those who send me the most beautiful notes, which are like, I'm with you. I know exactly what you're feeling. And I like love you so much for doing this. So I think it's all of them, and none is better or worse than the other. But I think it says to me that we need so much education when it comes to mental health, because we know what to say to someone when someone passes on. You know, there's certain things that you don't say. Yet we have no idea what to say to people who share with us that they're despondent, that they're anxious, that they're depressed. I think our first reaction is like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? And I wish we knew how to deal with it.
So what is a good thing to say? I mean, how do you let someone know that you're with them, that, you know, that struggle is real? What do you say?
Great question. And given that I suffered with this my entire life and had so many people not know what to say, I've thought about this answer for a really long time. Basically, all we want someone to say is we're seen and we're heard, and no one feels sorry for us, and they just are with us in our pain and just sitting with us, standing with us, shoulder to shoulder, and don't judge us, just accept us for having those feelings.
So, you know, you talk about pain, and yet you and Doug created this amazing toy company. You know, you're creative, you're beloved. You have 6 kids, each of whom is more fantastic than the other one. You know, you've got a beautiful house. How do you reconcile all that? Where does this existential anguish and depression fit in with creativity and success and family life?
Another amazing question. I mean, I think what I can hopefully show people is success doesn't buy you happiness. And, you know, I was born with this. Like, this isn't something that just came on from an incident, or I was born existentially depressed. You know, my mother said I screamed for the first year of my life 24/7 due to my unsettledness at being in this world and being in myself. So, you know, I raced outside myself for achievement as my validation my whole life, you know, achieving more and more and more and creating more and more and more. And in a way, even the creativity became my thwart against mortality. It was like, I'm going to create so much that I'm going to sort of beat mortality and just build this legacy that's greater than my mortality. But ultimately, it didn't work. And I think I needed to take that journey inward and truly accept myself in totality. And it doesn't matter what you have, where you come from, what you look like. Depression afflicts everybody. And I want to show, and I think the letters that mean the most to me are people who say, I didn't think I was like those rich people who, you know, are so successful until I looked in your eyes and I saw your pain and I realized we're not so different. And I say, yes, we are not different at all.
So how did you get through the day? You know, this depression, this anguish that just, I guess, was a part of every day. Yet you went to work, you know, you raised 6 kids. How did you do it?
The way so many people who are writing me are saying, basically, I repressed, denied, and disassociated from every single thing I was feeling, and really adopted a facade that became me. It was the only me I knew. So I wasn't conscious that I was wearing a facade. I mean, I didn't even know I was afflicted with this until about 5 years ago. So, and I went through the motions. I mean, my parents, society, everyone told me, like, you put on the smile and you surmount, right? I'm the American dream. I'm like, no pain, no gain. And those were the things, just do it. You know, I was the Nike, like, and those were the things I believed. I believed, like, no matter how bad you feel, you persevere, you survive. And that was kind of my badge of honor. You know, I almost felt like I am going to do this thing. Like, I don't care how sad I feel. I'm going to repress it and I'm going to just achieve.
When you realized what was going on in your life, was it a sudden realization? Was it a gradual dawning? And when you did figure it out, did you feel joyful or even worse?
That's a great question. Yeah, it was a series of what I call dot moments, which are these moments that when they happen, they suddenly connect all the dots of your life and form this beautiful trajectory that you can say, I get it, that's the meaning. And one of them came after listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and the host, Jonathan Fields, talked about this book that he read that was his favorite, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And although it was in my bookshelf, I had read it in my 20s. You know, sometimes you read something and it doesn't speak to you, and you read it again and suddenly it's like lightning bolt. So I decided to read it, and it was that book that began to change my life. Because in that book, Viktor Frankl, after he got out of the concentration camp and he was searching for meaning, he founded what he calls logotherapy, which is based on the premise that man's main motivation in life is the search for meaning. And he talked about how it was a form of existential analysis. And as I looked up those words, I had never heard of logotherapy. I had never heard the word existential in my entire life, even though I read the Thesaurus for fun as a child. And I know that's why I didn't have a lot of friends. But when I looked up the definition to existential angst, despair, depression, that was a falling to my knees moment. And I know I'm a dramatic person, but it truly was, oh my goodness, I have something that has a name. And not only did it have a name, but when it talked about those who had been afflicted with existential despair, it said that many of those, the majority, were highly creative. And that, for the first time ever, was truly like I could breathe, because I knew in that moment that I wasn't alone any longer.
And then you not only worked on yourself, and I'm sure that was a really tough project and a long
Thanks.
project, and then you decided to help others. You want to talk about Lifelines? Well, first,
Sure.
let's talk about that process.
Yeah.
With yourself and then Lifelines.
So, I've learned, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is you cannot heal the world until you heal yourself. And I always thought I could give from an empty well, and I was this selfless person, but really I was a martyr, because I was serving from nothing in my well. And that just ends up building tremendous resentment, which I had deep below the repression, was a ton of resentment. So I knew I needed to make this journey inward. And what's so fascinating is the journey inward had two legs to it, sort of two shoots. One of it was psychotherapy. And basically, when I reached this point, when I started realizing, and before that moment of alacrity that I was like, it's Viktor Frankl and I have existential despair, I had already gotten to this point where pain plus resistance equals suffering. And I was suffering so greatly because I was in pain, I was resisting it, and the cry of my soul was getting so loud that I was just so exhausted from resisting that I knew something had to give. And that was when sort of all those moments started happening. And for the first time ever, I stopped my futile racing outside myself for the answer. And I said, I need help. I can't do this alone anymore. And that was the first time my perfectionism cracked. And I said, I need help. I can't do this by myself. So I enlisted the help of a trained professional for the first time, who became my partner in going into myself for the first time in my life and unearthing all the feelings that had been repressed. Because for basically 50 years, I had lived with one emotion. Great, good, fine. How are you? Good, great. And I didn't even know what it meant to feel. I didn't even know what emotions were. I was so disassociated from feelings. So that became a 4-year journey, and one of the most arduous of my life, because when I really got to the bottom, I had to face the existential despair, which is nothingness in the eye. And that was really traumatic. But the good news is I did it, and it actually I came up from the depths and really to a very steadfast place. But so that gave me self-acceptance. Through that, I was able to accept myself in totality. And that was such a beautiful thing, because I was also able to accept all the stigmatizing qualities that enabled me to create, that I had rejected my whole life because they made me not fit in with conventional folks. And I was able to see that I had a blessing and a curse in my ability to freely create and accept the curse that was the genesis of my ability to create. But the second path was philosophical. So I accepted myself, but I hadn't found meaning, and I needed to go the philosophical route to find the meaning.
Did Doug and your kids have any idea?
I didn't have any idea. Like, the crazy thing is I didn't have any idea that I was afflicted at all.
But sometimes people know, even if you don't know, they can look at you and see that, something's going on. Did
Yes.
They know.
Yes. I mean, I met Doug when I was 19, and when I met him, I was in the throes of a major eating disorder. I weighed 82 pounds when I met him and was so frail I couldn't even walk up a flight of stairs. So I punished myself throughout my life, even though I didn't realize it. It was all unconscious. And he really was the first one who truly forced me to eat, and really saved me, because I don't think I would have lived, if he hadn't forced me to eat. But, I was still in such denial. If anyone would have asked me throughout my life, like, how are you? I would have been like, great. Why? Are you insinuating something isn't good with me? Like, I was very thorny about people even insinuating that anything was wrong with me, because my coping mechanism was perfection. And that was my only way that I anchored to perfection, and had to be perfect. So I think to show that anything was wrong would have meant I was worthless.
And your kids?
My kids definitely had no idea. I was determined to hide from them any shred of despair, because I thought it would be contagious to them. I didn't want them to see, I think unconsciously,
Yeah.
I wanted them to see me as like the super mom that could serve, and be at 5 games in one weekend, and, 25 birthday parties, and do it all effortlessly.
So how did you tell them? How do you explain to them that this person that they thought they knew, their super mom, was not the person they thought they knew?
Yeah, it was gradual, because, I wrote the book, and then I would say my oldest kids, I started to eke out. I started to tell them, like, I'm writing this book, I'm a creative. And it sort of came through the creative, this ability to create from nothing doesn't come without its other side. And I began to tell them that the ability to create from nothing wasn't without its very, very dark side. And that dark side I had hidden from everyone, including myself, because it was just too stigmatizing. I was too ashamed of sharing that I was so weird and afflicted, and, all those things that give me the ability to create.
But what a gift you've given them now.
Yeah, it's a blurse. It's another blurse, because, I think it's great in a way to show everything you're feeling, but for those who only see you as like serving and perfect and happy all the time, now if I show that, like, oh, I'm a little tired tonight, like, maybe you can put the dogs to bed. It's like, what do you mean? I don't put the dogs to bed, you put the dogs to bed. So part of my affliction, which is one of the volumes in my book, is martyrdom. Like, I served it was part of my validation, serving to the point where I thought I was protecting my kids from ever needing anything, but I was really denying them the ability to reach independence.
Oh.
So I think my martyrdom hampered both of us. It made me exhausted and bereft, and it made them unable to, cope and do a lot of things for themselves. So we're now sort of regrouping, and I'm stepping back from doing everything for them, and they're having to take more ownership, and that's painful. So that's sort of the blurse in it is, yes, they get to see me as a real person, but that also has its negatives in terms of continual servitude.
Wow. So as you look around Westport, and what do you see in terms of the mental health of people here? Everybody knows it's a tough town. It's a competitive, hard driving place. It's a rat race, whatever it is. Do you think there are mental health issues here that are different from other places, or are we all in the same boat everywhere?
That's a great question. I mean, I truly think, having, read thousands of letters at this point and talked with so many people, I don't think it's different anywhere. I think it is a scourge that is like afflicting the entire world. However, I will say, I think for the more affluent areas, it's even higher. You know, there's even more of an issue. And I think it's because, and this meaning crisis that afflicted me, you know, from birth, but an existential crisis can happen at any point, especially during COVID. And I think for these higher demographic areas, when you achieve everything and you have pretty much everything you've ever dreamed of and you still aren't happy, that's when you truly become depressed, because you have nothing left to aspire to. And you realize, oh my gosh, I've worked my whole life, right? To get this job, to have this house, to live in this town, to have my kids going to these schools, and I'm still not happy. Like, then you fall into real crisis. And I've gotten so many letters from people who are like, I have it all. And then they feel shame and guilt that they're not grateful. And that's the thing I'm hearing more and more. You know, I have it all, I should be happy, I'm not. And now I'm really guilty and shaming myself over it. So it's this loop that is just so heartbreaking to see.
And you have gotten out of the loop by Lifelines, by creating
Yes.
this.
Yes.
You call it an ecosystem, but you can explain it far better than I can. What is Lifelines?
Yeah. So I realized at some point, and I wrote a couple of verses that have become my mantras, which are, we alone possess the power to spend life forevermore, brokenhearted in a cell, or walk right through the open door. You know, this idea that there comes a point in your life when you have a choice to make. And you can choose to continue racing outside yourself for the answer, blaming, shaming, denying the truth, repressing, or you can make this journey inward. And that journey inward that I took with my therapist, that 4-year journey, became the centerpiece of our Lifelines ecosystem. And Lifelines is based on 3 core premises from my own life. The first is you are not alone, which sounds really cliched until you know my story, which is I felt so utterly stigmatized, rejected, and alone my whole life that I really felt I was on another planet or an island in the middle of the ocean, and that no one would ever accept me as who I was. And I am determined that no one should have to go through life feeling that way. So our community, which is growing every day, is so beautiful and so warm and accepting. We had an event today. We talked about allowing everything we're feeling. And we had about, 350 people on it, almost like the same as tonight. And we have people openly crying and saying this is the first time they felt accepted. And it's a beautiful, place where it's peer-to-peer, it's not professionals, but we are supporting each other in our brokenness. And it's just beautiful. The second tenet is we all have the ability to channel our darkness into light. I found through Melissa and Doug, it took 25 years until I realized that I didn't have to channel darkness into more darkness, because I created my whole life. But the truth was, for the first 25 years, it was only darkness out of darkness. Everything I created was dark, and so dark that I was terrified of letting it touch others and having them see it, because they'd want to sort of imprison me somewhere. But when I started creating toys, I realized I actually had a choice, and I made the choice to channel that very same darkness into radiant light through creating toys. So I found my salvation through creativity and through creating jubilant things from the despair. But we all have those innate seeds of self-expression within us that yearn to be sowed and sort of spark into a bonfire with humanity. Some of us just have never really gone inward and discovered those, or we might know them, but we might be too fearful to let them rage. So I think we're showing people that they do have the seeds of salvation within their souls and can channel their darkness into light. And then the third, which is the centerpiece of our ecosystem, the journey to inner space, we call it, is we will never find fulfillment or be at peace until we make that arduous journey inward and accept ourselves in totality. Because it's only once we accept ourselves in totality that we can truly accept others in their totality as well.
So what is the ecosystem? What is it? I'm a concrete guy. What does it consist?
Okay, so the ecosystem consists of one community, this incredible community that we're forging. And we have a beautiful private Facebook group that's engaging in really meaningful conversations every day. We have tons of content. We are creating workshops, such cool workshops. In fact, we have one tonight, it's called Telling Your Story. And it's going to be open mic, and it's going to show people how they can craft their story and really take what's in here and so hidden and repressed and turn it into a story. So our workshops, I did one earlier today. We have maybe 5 to 6 a week, which are growing, and they're all free. By the way, our entire ecosystem is free because no one should have to pay to find kinship and friendship and be accepted. So all this is entirely free. And then we have incredible tools and content too. You know, we have the journey, which is this pretty broad journey. It's like 20 videos and scores of exercises and this really deep journey that you can take either by yourself or with a therapist if it gets too difficult, to really unearth your true self and really start to go in and deal with those feelings that have been repressed for so long. And, you know, it's lifelines.com. And we've really had such a wonderful time creating what was in here. You know, we envisioned it from this metaphoric journey that I took. And now to see it visually come alive as an actual like hike with a backpack and with a mood compass is just, it's almost unfathomable.
And it's free.
It's free, completely free.
So the people who thought you guys were great, Melissa and Doug, for sponsoring the fireworks in Westport, I mean, this is more than fireworks. This is life-changing for people.
I mean, I hope so. You know, when I hear these folks speak, I mean, it just breaks my heart. And it was what I went through too, but I put I was able to put one foot in front of the other and still, you know, make it. So many of these folks are really drowning and they are so low and they just need that person to say to them, I see you. I talked to someone the other day. She said, I haven't had someone look at me the way you're looking at me in years. And it was like, you know, just to say to her, I see you, like, I see you and you are beautiful and you still have that light in you. You still have the ability to make something meaningful of your life. Like, who knows? I mean, maybe, you know, she's still in bed today, but she really, like, the tears were running down her face and she was like, thank you. I'm going to make change in my life. And that's all you can do is lead a horse to water. You know, I can't carry your backpack for you. I can just shine my light on the trail and say, it worked for me. Like, I believe it'll work for you, but you have to make the choice to do it. And I feel like at the end, you know, we have to take responsibility for our lives at some point in either making the choice to do the work, because life doesn't give it to you. You know, you don't just sit there and I think I find a lot of people like are just waiting. They're like, it's supposed to be great. It's supposed to be beautiful. It's supposed to be happy. Why am I not happy? And, you know, I have to gently say, like, I can only share my own experience, but it took me wresting myself out of the despair and finding the meaning for myself. And it was all about taking responsibility for my own meaning and making it, you know, at all costs.
So does dealing with all these people and hearing these stories and, you know, hearing their pain, and does it take energy or does it give you energy? That's
such a great question. It does both. I would say it depends on the day. You know, yesterday I had to have an extra session with my therapist because I thought I might not ever be able to get up. I mean, it was so painful reading every letter, just thinking about it. You know, people's pain is just, it's really deep, and it's every age. I mean, I have kids that are 11 years old reaching out to me. I have people that are 111 reaching out to me. Like, this shows there's no sort of group that you can say it's afflicting. It's everyone. And I said to her, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I thought the coming out was the hard part. That's not the hard part at all. That was like, the hard part is now I'm seeing it. Like, now it was like we had this pressure cooker, at least for me, it was a pressure cooker. You know, the lid was on it, like I wasn't seeing it. And when the lid came blowing off, suddenly it was like, oh, I suddenly saw it for myself for the first time. And I'm sure I was shielding my eyes all these years because I was in my own pain. But seeing it now, I feel such a burden and a responsibility to help others that I just need the strength to do it.
Yeah, see, it's not.
So here, we're going to go to questions in a couple of minutes, but here is, I guess, my last question. You talked about, somebody needs to get muted there. You talked about search for meaning. You know, there was no meaning in life, and that brought anguish and depression. It sounds like now you have found meaning. So is it all over now? What's ahead?
That's a great question. So, I mean, meaning for me, and studying all the philosophers, for them too, is transcending yourself. It's called self-transcendence. It's when you transcend your burdened head that tells you all those misconceptions and lies, and engaging in something that is beyond you, that puts you directly in the flow of life. And I am doing that now. I feel like more than I ever have, and it is giving me profound meaning. Does that mean every day is great? Hardly. It means that I'm now, and especially since I've accepted my full spectrum of emotions, I have many days, because I am hypersensitive and I create out of a lot of anguish and despair. So many days I get up and I'm really low, like just because it's my chemistry, like I was born low. So it doesn't mean, because I found my meaning, that every day is beautiful. However, I do know that I choose life now. And that was a huge step in my life. I am not trying to punish myself anymore. And I'm not trying to slowly kill myself, which I did for many years. I am really fortunate and grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have my beautiful husband by my side, who's been supporting me for 35 years, and my 6 children, and to have something that does give me meaning. So I'm proud to say that even though I have days when I'm really low and questioning life's meaning still, despite the fact I have meaning, I now say to myself, I choose life. And that means that I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to have to engage my own practice, my own lifelines, to remain sort of equanimous in the face of my highs and lows.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Thank you, Dan.
And
thank you so much for doing this, Dan. That was beautiful.
It makes my year. This is fantastic.
The year, it's only March. That's not saying much.
Well, compared to last year.
That's true.
People can ask questions. There's a little Q&A icon down at the bottom of your screen. And the first one is Lifelines suitable for children or teens?
We are saying 18 and up. You know, I think at some point, however, Lifelines Junior is the most important thing we have to do, because we need to change. Sorry, I'm going to take a little sip. We need to teach children as young as preschool how to show and feel their emotions, and that it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to fail. So we already have Lifelines Junior in the works, and it will be for younger as well soon.
Are there men in your community? If so, what proportion are male?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say so far it's maybe, we have a lot of men, 60-40 women to men. We have a lot of men. It's very, and of course, Doug, built this with me. Like we did this together, just like Melissa and Doug. I'm the spokesperson because he's not existentially depressed, thank goodness. But in terms of building it so that it appealed to everybody, Doug's right there by my side.
Here's a good one. How does or can Lifelines complement or replace traditional therapy?
It's only a compliment. I think I suggest, now that I have come out the other side, and my therapist has truly been my lifesaver. Like, she journeyed with me to that incredibly dark place. And without her, I never would have accepted myself, because I never would have accepted those deep, dark feelings. So I'm such an advocate of therapy now. Like, I used to think of it as something you did when you were weak. Can you believe that? That's the generation, the past generation. It was like something you did when you were broken. Now I think it's something you do when you're so brave and you're so strong. So if for those of us that can afford to do it, and there's so many who can't, which is a whole other issue, but I advocate for it. And then the community, that's the peer-to-peer. Those are the folks who are so honest and have been, they've been so low. And they're the ones who, are your family. They're basically your family. And today we were talking on our call about how many people's actual families have not supported them, and they've denied their affliction or how they're feeling. And we were talking about how you can have your biological family and you can have your non-biological family that supports you. And that's kind of what we feel like. We're this non-biological family that gives like complete and utter empathy and compassion.
There are a lot of ways to have family.
Yeah, there really are.
And you found a great one. My friend John Brandt wants to know, or he writes, Westport students are under more pressure than usual with hybrid learning and the expectations of parents expecting excellence. After a year of even more pressure, do you see a need to tend to younger people with pandemic pressure? In other words, how is the pandemic affecting kids?
Oh, it's made it so much worse. I think the pandemic has isolated us so much, and I think it's taken I already thought learning didn't have a lot of joy in it because it's become so, so much about test scores. But I think remote, it takes even more joy out of it. I see my kids in front of that screen and there's no joy. They're slouched. They're like, I don't hear any of the things you would hear in a classroom. So I feel like the isolation has been really difficult for them. And also, as someone who advocated against screen use for so many years at Melissa and Doug, I feel like that has become just like, even in my own home, we were so good about screen time rules. Like with having to work at home with your kids at home, the door just got blown off that too. So I think there's a lot of screen addiction that's going to come out of this, which isn't good for kids either.
Lisa Allman says the therapist who has been helping you must have some superpower to be able to reach such a powerful, intelligent woman as you.
Aww.
How were you able to find this person who could reach you and your needs and develop the trust she could possibly understand?
It was through a Westporter, I believe, who gave her name to me and had a great experience with her. And to be honest, it's divine, like whatever you want to call it, providence, that we came together, because I needed someone who had gone to that deep, dark place. And so many therapists don't do the work themselves necessarily. They might have the, academic credentials, but many of them haven't, maybe they haven't had that level of despair. But I had to find someone who had been at that bottom of as low as you could go and had to find the light herself. Because when I did end up going there, I was so terrified and so desperate that the only thing that kept me here was her saying, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, I'm here. And those words were, I mean, if I say them, I get emotional, because when you're in that spot, and for so many years, people wouldn't ever be there with you. Even when you got like not even close to that, people were like, oh my gosh, hope you get better, bye. You know, they were like out heading for the hills. Like, to have someone say, I'm not going anywhere, like I'm right here with you, was the most beautiful words I had ever heard. So she helped me write the journey for Lifelines. She's part of Lifelines, and she's now like my soul sister. She is just the greatest. And
how did you find her?
I found her just through a bunch of local people who said she's incredible. Like, she's this special, special person. And she happens to come from the, you know, spiritual realm. She's a yogi and a meditation expert. So I'm very, you know, about Eastern philosophy, and I love philosophers and mystics, and she also comes from that realm. So we really hit it off kind of spiritually and philosophically too. So it was a good, and the other part I have to say is I was ready. Like, it's not just about the therapist, it's about the student. You know, if you go to the best therapist in the world and you're resistant and you're not ready and you're still denying, like, nothing's going to happen. But I was broken at that point, and I was like, take me. I need salvation. I need to discover what's going on in here, because I'm really in pain. So I was so willing to do whatever I needed to do to heal, that like, she had a pretty good student in me, I have to say.
A related question, which I'm sure people are wondering about, Julie Brown wonders, did medication ever play a part in your recovery?
That's an amazing question. And I'll start by saying, to each his and her own. And I am absolutely a proponent of medication if it's right for that particular person. For me, however, and it's really weird, I knew from a very, very early age that medication was not my path, for two reasons. And it doesn't mean that I couldn't have taken it and it might have worked, but I had this very strong intuition that I couldn't ever take it. One was because I was suffering from a meaning crisis, which many say is not pharmacological or pathological, it's actually philosophical. And because I wanted questions to the why am I here, you know, what is the meaning of life, and what am I meant to do in my brief time here, I knew that a pill, a medication that sort of calmed me, would not give me those answers. And then secondly, you know, more than anyone I've ever known, like, my salvation is creativity. And I was absolutely terrified that if anything even dampened my ability to freely create, I couldn't even risk it, that I wouldn't be here today. I mean, truly, like, I hold on to that channel, those words, those verses I write for my salvation. So I couldn't ever, and a few times I knew, I was like, I need to take medicine. Like, I am in a really bad place, but I didn't even go there, because it was too terrifying that it might dampen my creativity.
And you knew yourself very well. So that's important.
I did. Yeah. And the really fascinating thing for me, for my story, is once I accepted myself and stopped denying how I felt, once I studied the philosophers, you're seeing a few of my lifelines, my furry friends. Once I studied the philosophers and got my answer to why, which I got very, very clearly, my despair in effect lifted. It wasn't that I'm still hypersensitive and I still have these vacillations of emotional highs and lows, but that dark sense of fog that covered me for so many years and made me want to end my life really lifted. And I felt free. I felt freer than I had ever felt.
Here's another question. actually a comment. One of the things that the suburbs and higher socioeconomic level gives us is more privacy. One can argue that one aspect of privacy is isolation.
Mhm.
Do you think that our increased level of privacy is one of the things that is fueling this epidemic of depression, anxiety, and eating disorders?
Absolutely, yes. I think, there are two things. I did a lot on the study of happiness, which I don't necessarily believe in either, because I think the pursuit of happiness just leaves us feeling like we failed when we don't achieve it. But really, I think there are two things that have led to this epidemic, and just being a layperson, one is isolation. When we are biological creatures, and when we isolate ourselves, by definition, we ultimately become depressed because we long to be cuddled with others in communing. And then the second that I'm seeing so much, which is the channeling the darkness into light, is we are no longer in our hearts doing, this society and technology and performance pressure has put us so deeply in our heads and so fearful. Everything is fear now, right? We fear everything. We have the 24/7 news cycle. Like, we're here, we're like firmly here, and we've forgotten our inner child. We've forgotten what it means to live in our hearts, doing things that bring us joy and connect us to the present moment and being alive. And when I talk to these folks in despair and I say to them, like, what are you doing in your heart? Like, what are you doing? They say, nothing. I'm like, nothing? I'm like, what do you love to do? And they're like, I lost track of it. Like, and most of them, something traumatic happened. Some of them, they were a teacher for 30 years and the school closed down. And it's usually a very traumatic end to something, or their life partner passed away. And what happens is they don't fill their heart with anything. So they're isolated and they have nothing that brings them joy. And to me, you're isolated, you have nothing that brings you joy. By definition, you are going to go into despair. And that's what I'm seeing. And I think, I'm doing a workshop on Sunday, which is reigniting your inner child. And I feel like a lot of us don't realize that if you don't start playing as a child and keep it alive your entire life, you will fall into despair.
So maybe you've got Melissa and Doug toys for adults. Something else to do.
That's true. Doug's ready.
Someone wonders.
I'm ready. Sanel's ready.
Someone says you spoke about jealousy in the session earlier, and I'm wondering if you could expand on that, on how you struggled with jealousy.
Oh, wow. So that's one of the topics we are going to talk about in our workshops. I felt such rabid competitiveness and jealousy my entire life because I was so bereft inside and didn't have any sense of worthiness that anything anyone had that I didn't, I felt wasn't fair. And I was extremely competitive and envious. And I spent most of my life looking at others and saying, what does he have that I don't have? What does she have? And just ruminating and really doing this tick off of comparison. And that became like my mode through college. It was horrible. And it's a horrible feeling. Like, jealousy is a very, very ugly feeling. And that's probably one of the ones I've had to do the most work on. And even today, sometimes something will happen and I'll feel a twinge of jealousy, even for a friend of mine. They'll have something happen in their lives and I'll be like, ugh, I want to be happy for them, but I'm like, for some reason, I'm not happy for them. And it feels really ugly. And of course, then what do? I judge it. I go into my head and I say, Melissa, like, you don't even want what she has. Like, why are you jealous of it? And you have everything. Like, who are you to judge? And I start like going into the judging myself for judging, which is a very, very bad loop. So what I have to do always, this is what I do now. I feel this really like pain in my heart because I'm like, I know I shouldn't be jealous of someone and I'm feeling the jealousy. So what I have to do is I have to go off, sneak outside, sit somewhere outside and I have to go back to the wounded inner child, because everything comes from our wounded inner child. We suffer these traumas in childhood. We don't process them effectively. They stay repressed and they get triggered every time the same thing comes up through the rest of our lives. And we respond like we're a little child. So when I feel jealous, I'm responding like I'm a little child again. So I go back to, why am I feeling this way? And I connect to that feeling. That's always something from childhood. It's always the feeling of not being enough, of feeling unworthy, and being triggered that I'm jealous of something someone else has. And what do? I accept and allow that feeling. I allow myself to feel the jealousy I felt my whole life. And what do? I offer myself compassion for it. I say, Melissa, you're human. Of course you felt that way. You never built up a good sense of ego, and a good sense of worthiness. You never built that self-worth within, and you're just reacting based on that. And then what do? I do what's called a butterfly hug. I give myself a butterfly hug and I'm like, I love you, Melissa. You're okay. And I do it again and again and again. And the crazy thing is once you do that, once you revisit any emotion you're feeling that feels icky, and you give yourself compassion for it, it disappears. And whenever I do that, I realize I go back into my day, and sometimes it's 10 at night and I realize I'm not feeling it anymore. It's over.
Wow. More questions. This is fantastic. And thank you for,
Thank you.
You're awesome. Will Lifelines partner with local therapists in an effort to make it easier for the community to seek help with mental health issues?
You know what? That's our biggest challenge. And we have to figure out how to deal with that, because we have so many people coming to us that are in really desperate states and need more help than we can give them. I mean, scores, hundreds and hundreds. And we have to figure out, we don't want to just refer them to, a hotline. Like, we want to figure out how we can work with true mental health professionals to help serve these folks. And many of them don't have the financial means to even enlist those services. So this is such a big problem that we're going to have to, really unite as a society and figure out how to handle it, because it's deep. And we're just a passion project that's trying to help people feel a little less alone. But I think what we've unleashed is something much, much darker and much, much deeper. So we hope over time that a whole bunch of folks can come together and we can refer people to them, and that they'll be able to help ease some of the pain these people are carrying around.
What reading, in addition to your reference to Jonathan Fields, do you recommend?
What reading? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I am obsessed with philosophy, and it's really deep, but it has given me so much meaning. So I'll give you some of my favorite books. Or I'll start with some of my favorite philosophers. So Friedrich Nietzsche is incredible. He said amor fati, which is love your fate, to love everything, love anything by him. I love, I think it's Peter Zapffe, Z-A-P-F-F-E, and he talked about sublimation, which is where you transcend all the pain and sublimate. Oh, love that. Albert Camus, who talked about absurdism. Jean-Paul Sartre, who talked about freedom is really taking ownership of your life. Soren Kierkegaard, who actually said that anxiety is a positive aspect of self-actualization. So I was like, oh, this anxiety isn't bad. Nope, it's good. Let's see who else. I love the book Touch with Fire by Kay Redfield Jamison. That's one of my favorite books of all time. I love The Joy of Living Courageously by Osho. Another incredible book. Obviously, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Let's see. Oh my gosh, Stephen Cope, Yoga and the Quest for the True Self. Best book ever. I could go on and on. I have a lot of books I love.
I would love to see your bookshelves.
I am such an avid reader. I love reading more than anything, and anything by you.
Jocks. Jocks by Dan Woog.
Oh, Doug said Jocks by Dan Woog.
There you go. One of my favorites. Someone says plenty of people without creative success or don't have it all have similar journey of feeling unhappy, unconnected, an alien in a foreign land. Are you suggesting, or they say you aren't suggesting, that depression is more seen in creatives or people who have achieved? In other words,
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's seen in, I think it's different types of depression. I'm reading thousands and thousands of letters, and it's not just creative people. It's people from all walks of life, every single, and some of it is triggered. Some of it is their circumstances in life, and horrible stories and things that happen to them that trigger their depression. And others are biological, chemical. I think I've seen it all. Like at this point, I couldn't say it's any one thing, but I will say that existentially depressed people and highly creative people, if you read Kay Redfield Jamison's book, tend to suffer from melancholia and depressive disorders. And it's very high, believe it or not. I hope I get this right, but the highest percentage of afflicted creative people are poets, and it's 87%. And it goes from composers who are 60% all the way to poets that are 87%. So I think people who are highly creative do tend to suffer from melancholia and certain forms of mental illness. But it doesn't mean a lot of others don't. And I'm certainly seeing that a lot of others do.
someone wonders if parents can help guide their kids to eliminate some of the jealousy you've described. And I'll add on to that. What is the role of parents in all of this? I mean,
and again, don't think I have done a great job at this. The reason I had 6 kids is because I had to keep having more to rectify the mistakes I made with the first ones. So I believe our job as a parent is to sow those beautiful seeds of self-expression in each child so that they can discover their light and their meaning. And I think what happens a lot, and one of the sayings that I feel is most tragic, is the biggest threat to children are their parents' unfulfilled dreams. And I feel like so many of us inadvertently, and I did the same thing. So I am in that crowd. We live through our children because we haven't filled our own gaping hole with worth. Our children become our sense of worth, and we guide them down the path that we want to see them, or the path of our own unfulfilled dreams. And then that helps nobody. That helps no one. That makes it so both sides are miserable. Kids don't find their meaning, and we end up, our kids end up angry at us that we push them down a path that isn't their true path. So I think the best thing we can do is accept and see our children as exactly they are, not how we want them to be, and allow them to blossom into exactly who they are. Easier said than done. Don't think I've done this. So all truth told, I have one sitting here who would probably say, have I done that?
Hello, everyone.
I don't know if I've done that, but I don't think I have very effectively. So I'm still learning too, but I always say I can write, teach, and profess the simple truths I need to know. And yet when it comes to living them, I've still so far to go.
As we all are.
Yeah.
I get the last question. What should I have asked that I didn't?
Gosh, I don't think you left any stone unturned, Dan. I mean, I think we talked about it all. Only that we're here to support the community. We're here to support anyone who is struggling. And I want people to know that people who look like they have it all struggle. Like there is no one who doesn't struggle. So the more we can share that and take off that facade of social media that tries to show us that everything's perfect, like, honestly, the better we'll all be. Because once we realize that it's not supposed to be perfect, we're not supposed to be happy all the time, we're just supposed to be and experience all of it, you know, the happier we'll be. And I think, as you say so beautifully on 06880, we are in this together.
We are. And one of the great things I think about this community is the way we can learn together, the way we can embrace one another. You know, it's a big town, it's a crazy town, but it's our town. And I think for the people who know you, for the people who love you, for the people who have grown up with your kids and with Melissa and Doug toys, this is sort of a wonderful window into what the world really is. Lifelines is fantastic. It's a great ecosystem. It's lifelines.com.
Yes.
And it's free, as you said.
Free.
There are links in the chat to where you can purchase Lifelines, the book, and then pick it up at the library. What have I forgotten?
No, I think you got everything. Hi, everybody. It's Alex from the library. Just wanted to hop on at the end here to say thank you so much to Melissa for doing this. We really appreciate it. And to you, Dan, for doing this. This was really a wonderful hour. So on behalf of the Westport Library and our really awesome community partner, Westport Together, thank you all for being here, for being engaged and for asking questions. And again, to Melissa, thank you for writing this book. Thank you for everything you do and for bringing this to our community. We appreciate it, and I know the community does. And on that note, Dan, thank you for everything you do for this community. You are indispensable, and we all love you. And I'm going to leave everybody tonight with a little more information about Lifelines. So you can join the, I'm imagining it is a very fast growing community, and begin your own journey inward at lifelines.com. And Melissa would love to continue the conversation with you. You can email her at any time at melissabernstein@lifelines.com.
Yes.
So please do that. And everybody, please stay safe, be well, and have a really wonderful evening. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alex, Bill, Westport Library, and Dan. Thank you so much for being part of this and helping spread the message that no one is alone.
Awesome.